He was a brilliant but broken CEO, haunted by betrayal and bound by a contract that demanded marriage or the loss of everything he built. She was a self-taught architect with nothing but grit, secrets, and a sketchbook. What began as a fake engagement turned into something far more powerful, until a shocking accusation shattered their fragile trust. But when the truth surfaced, so did a love worth fighting for. Who is Maya Bennett, and why did Ethan Caldwell risk everything for her? Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories like this one. The Chicago skyline stretched like a sea of lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Caldwell Design Group's headquarters. It was nearly midnight, but the city refused to sleep. Just like Ethan Caldwell. Standing in his sleek glass office on the 47th floor, hands in his pockets, his silhouette framed against the glow of the skyline, he looked every bit the composed CEO. But inside, the storm raged. The Architectural Expo tomorrow was supposed to mark the pinnacle of his career. A decade of rebuilding his father's firm, re-establishing trust after scandal, and redefining the company's legacy under his own name. But the model of his latest eco-housing project, carefully displayed under soft spotlights in the center of the room, barely held his attention. Instead, his eyes kept drifting to the weathered envelope lying on his desk. The last document his father ever signed. He walked over slowly, like the paper might shatter if approached too fast. Sitting down, Ethan slid the letter out and read the same bold clause again. In order to retain 51% ownership of Caldwell Design Group, Ethan Caldwell must be legally married by his 35th birthday. His jaw tightened. 35. That birthday was exactly 30 days away. 30 days until everything he'd rebuilt could be ripped out of his hands, not by incompetence or scandal, but by a technicality written into a contract meant to protect the company. What his father had intended as a safeguard had become a trap. He leaned back in the chair, rubbing a hand over his face. He wasn't the kind of man who believed in love anymore. That had been stolen from him 3 years ago when Leah Cross, his former business partner, and once the woman he trusted most, had stolen his blueprints and sold them to a rival firm. The fallout nearly bankrupted the company. His father never recovered from the betrayal, dying 6 months later from a stroke Ethan always blamed himself for. Since then, Ethan had kept people at arm's length. No partners, no vulnerabilities, just work, just survival. His phone buzzed beside him, lighting up with a message from Daniel Hart, his closest friend and legal counsel. "I found someone. She's not conventional, but I think she's exactly what you need. Her name's Maya Bennett. She'll be there in an hour." Ethan's brow furrowed. He didn't need a matchmaker. He needed a solution. But Daniel wasn't the type to waste time on sentiment. If he was suggesting this woman, it had to be serious. He stood and poured himself a glass of scotch, letting the amber liquid burn its way down his throat. He didn't want a wife. He wanted control. The company was his father's legacy, and now his. Giving up even 1% felt like betrayal. The clock ticked closer to 1 a.m. when a knock echoed through the office. Ethan didn't move at first. He stared at the door with a kind of stillness that came from years of hiding emotion. "Come in," he finally said. The door opened, revealing Daniel first, and behind him, a woman nothing like Ethan had pictured. No designer heels, no sleek dress, just a woman in a faded jacket, jeans, and a tightly coiled bun, holding a weathered sketchbook against her chest. Her face was calm, her eyes direct. "This is Maya Bennett," Daniel announced. "Freelance designer, works in sustainable housing, and the only person crazy enough to help you pull this off." Ethan arched a brow, sizing her up. She didn't flinch under his scrutiny. "I'm not here to waste your time," Maya said, stepping forward. "You need a wife. I'm offering a contract. 1 month, no strings. But you better decide fast, because if Leah Cross takes control, I guarantee she won't be nearly as cooperative." Ethan blinked. For the first time in a long while, he was caught off guard. He set down his glass, then crossed his arms slowly. "Then tell me, Miss Bennett," he said coolly, "why the hell are you the right woman to save my company?" She smiled, unfazed. "Because I know how to build things from nothing, and because I have nothing left to lose." He didn't know why, but in that moment, Ethan realized this wasn't going to be a typical transaction. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. By the end of the week, Ethan and Maya were splashed across every architecture and business tabloid as Chicago's most unexpected power couple. The press dubbed it the design engagement, a whirlwind romance between the city's most elusive CEO and a mysterious upstart no one had heard of. Maya handled the attention with unnerving calm. No rehearsed lines, no faked laughter. Just a quiet poise that somehow made everything feel real. They made their first public appearance together at the grand opening of Caldwell Design's sustainable living model home. Maya stood beside Ethan, her hand lightly looped through his arm, smiling as if she belonged there all along. When reporters asked how they met, she leaned toward Ethan and whispered, "Brooklyn Art Show, right?" He gave a slight nod, playing along, though it was the first time he'd heard the backstory she'd crafted. "His ideas intrigued me," she said to the cameras, voice warm but grounded. "And when someone sees your vision before you've even fully shaped it, you don't forget that." Ethan watched her out of the corner of his eye. Her delivery was flawless, but what struck him wasn't how convincing she was. It was how natural she made the whole charade feel, like she wasn't acting at all. After the event, back at headquarters, they reviewed the latest drafts of the upcoming eco-housing project. Maya pulled out her own sketches and laid them beside his. Her design style was raw but inventive, curved lines where others went rigid, green spaces folded into places he hadn't considered. "You think like an engineer," Ethan said, tracing one of her diagrams, "but draw like an artist." "I learned both from the streets," she replied. "Library books don't care if you're broke." He glanced at her, unsure whether she was being poetic or literal. Later that night, they stayed long after the rest of the team had gone home. The office was quiet, except for the hum of computers and the occasional scratch of Maya's pencil. She didn't fidget or seek validation. She worked with intention, every line drawn with purpose. "You always this focused?" Ethan asked. "Only when it matters," she replied without looking up. He leaned back in his chair, watching her from the dim glow of the overhead lights. There was something about the way she occupied space, quiet but undeniable. He had been surrounded by noise for so long, critics, investors, old ghosts, but she was a silence that spoke. Around midnight, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same drafting pencil. It was a small thing, a second at most, but it sent something sharp through his chest. Her skin was warm, her fingers were steady. She didn't pull away quickly, didn't make it awkward. She just handed him the pencil like nothing had happened and went back to sketching. But for Ethan, that moment lingered. He looked at her then, not as the woman hired to fix a crisis, not as a business move, but as a person. Someone who showed up in jeans and confidence. Someone who didn't need to prove herself because she already knew who she was. "Where'd you study design?" he asked quietly. "I didn't," she said, surprising him. "Self-taught. No degree, just trial and error and obsession." He blinked. "You're kidding." She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "When you grow up with nothing, you don't wait for permission to learn." Ethan said nothing for a long beat. Then, almost without realizing, he stood and walked to the kitchenette, pouring 2 cups of coffee. He slid one across the table toward her. "Thanks," she said, glancing up with a soft smile. He nodded, his voice low. "You remind me of something I used to believe in." She tilted her head. "What's that?" "Grit, kindness," he said, almost to himself. "People who build instead of break." They didn't speak again after that, not because there was nothing left to say, but because something unspoken had begun to settle between them. Not attraction, not yet, but a recognition of 2 people who had spent their lives building in silence and had finally found someone who could hear it. It happened fast, too fast. One moment, they were sipping coffee in a quiet corner of the design lab, laughing at a poorly drawn concept for a rooftop greenhouse. The next, Ethan's assistant rushed in, face pale, clutching a printed email with shaking hands. Ethan snatched it, skimming the words. The color drained from his face. An anonymous source had leaked confidential renderings of Caldwell Design's next phase blueprints to a rival firm. The message accused Maya Bennett of being the mole. There was a photo. Blurry, but clear enough. Maya standing in a hallway outside Leah Cross's boutique architecture firm 2 nights ago. And beneath it, a screenshot of a text message, supposedly from her. "The collection is ready. He doesn't suspect a thing." Ethan's blood ran cold. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked, storming down the corridor to the second-floor workspace where Maya had holed herself up for hours, finalizing revisions on the eco-housing model. She looked up as he burst through the door, smiling, unsuspecting. "You're back early," she said, brushing her hair from her eyes. "I was just about to show you." He slammed the laptop on the table between them. The email glared back at her, harsh and undeniable. "Care to explain this?" he said, his voice low and ice-cold. Maya froze. Her smile vanished. "What is this?" "You tell me," Ethan snapped. "The messages, the photos, that night in Paris, he doesn't suspect a thing? That was me, wasn't it?" No, she said, stepping back, her voice cracking. "That call was about the supplier. I was trying to help Ethan. I swear. I don't know how she got this. I didn't betray you." "Didn't you?" he hissed, his eyes blazing. "You really had me fooled. The girl with the sketchbook and the tragic past, you almost made me believe again." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "You really think I would do this to you?" Ethan turned his back. "I think you knew exactly what you were doing from the start." Silence fell heavy between them, broken only by the sound of a coffee mug sliding from the edge of the table and shattering on the floor. Like something else, something far more fragile, had broken along with it. "If you won't listen, then I have nothing more to say," Maya whispered. Her voice was steadier than her tears. "But I never lied to you." Ethan didn't move, didn't turn around. "Get out," he said quietly, "before I call security." Maya stood for a moment, trembling, her hands clenched at her sides. Then she turned and walked out, her footsteps hollow against the tile. The door closed softly behind her, but the silence it left behind was deafening. Alone now, Ethan sank into the nearest chair, his head in his hands. For the first time in years, he didn't feel anger or resolve, only regret, and something else he'd worked hard to bury, grief. It came back in waves, his father's death, Leah's betrayal, and now, this. The one woman who had managed to reach past the walls he had built, and he had thrown her away. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. The next morning, he sat in front of his laptop with red eyes and a stiff jaw. The city outside was shrouded in thick fog, as if it too were unsure of what to believe. An email blinked into his inbox with a subject line that made his stomach twist. "Ask your fake wife." It was from Leah. He opened it with a shaking hand. "You're a fool to trust her. Maya Bennett isn't who you think she is. Ask her what she's hiding. Here's the proof." Attached were more photos. Another supposed text thread. "Don't worry, he doesn't suspect a thing." Ethan sat motionless, every muscle clenched. The pieces fell into place too neatly, too perfectly. But the anger was already there, like dry kindling waiting for a spark. He stared out at the skyline, and for the first time since Maya walked in with that damn sketchbook, Ethan Caldwell felt completely, utterly alone. The boardroom lights buzzed faintly overhead as Ethan sat stiffly before the camera, his expression carved from stone. Behind him, the walls of Caldwell Design Group stood pristine, no trace of Maya's sketches or the laughter that had once filled late nights in that very space. Just silence. Just order. Just Ethan. The emergency board meeting had been called at dawn. Rumors had spread like fire across media outlets, accusations of design theft, insider sabotage. The source, a series of anonymous posts tied back to a shell account that, until this morning, Ethan couldn't trace. But Daniel could. And he had. Ethan clicked share screen. Internal emails blinked to life, sharp and damning. "This," Ethan said calmly, voice lower than usual, "is a directive from Leah Cross to her PR team, instructing them to leak fabricated documents suggesting our firm stole their sustainable housing blueprint. It was all premeditated." He switched to the next file. "And here's the transaction record. She hired a third-party firm to recreate our models she had stolen when she still had access to our server through a former contractor." The board members buzzed in disbelief. Some looked appalled. Others leaned in, silent, processing. And then, as if the tension hadn't already stretched to the brink, another scream joined the call. "Maya." Ethan's heart stumbled in his chest. Her face was pale, tired, but there was something unshakable in her eyes. He couldn't look away. She didn't glance at him. She looked directly into the camera. "My name is Maya Bennett," she said, her voice steady, "and I never betrayed Caldwell Design Group. I never sold out Ethan Caldwell." Her screen changed. "This is a chat log between Leah Cross and a hacker for hire. She commissioned him to forge messages using my name and likeness. Click. The log appeared. Time-stamped. Graphic. Chilling. This is the payment receipt Leah sent to the forger's offshore account. Click. And this. Her voice caught but didn't break. This is an audio recording. Leah threatening to destroy Caldwell Design's reputation unless Ethan surrendered control of the company. A pin-drop silence followed. A board member unmuted. If this is accurate, I motion to remove Leah Cross from the board immediately. Another chimed in. And press charges. Full legal action. Ethan inhaled sharply. All files have been authenticated by a third-party cybersecurity firm. They're real. Every one of them. Leah's camera briefly flickered on. She looked shocked, her mouth moving in silent protest, but her mic was muted. Her voice for once was nothing. The vote was swift, unanimous. Leah was expelled, her shares frozen. Legal action initiated. The board call cleared slowly, member by member logging off, their voices now tinged with apology, with awe, with thanks. Only 2 screens remained, Ethan and Maya. They sat there, facing each other through pixels and silence. Ethan stared, trying to find the words. Maya's expression didn't soften. She wasn't there to be saved. She had already done the saving. You came back, Ethan finally said, voice rough. I didn't come back to save you, Maya replied gently. I came back because I never really left. A beat passed. He couldn't speak. His mouth opened but no sound came. And then, a message buzzed in Ethan's earpiece. Daniel's voice. She's at a cafe near Lincoln Park. Right now. If you still want her, go. Ethan didn't hesitate. He closed the laptop, grabbed his coat, and ran. Down the glass halls, into the elevator, through the revolving doors that suddenly felt too slow. He ran like he was chasing not time, but a second chance. Outside, the air was cold. The city blurred past him. He didn't care about the drizzle soaking his shirt or the curious stares from passers-by. All that mattered was her. The woman he pushed away, the woman who came back anyway. He reached the cafe, breath-catching. And there she was, sitting beneath a striped awning, fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold, eyes on the lake. Ethan slowed, heart pounding. She looked up. I didn't think you'd come, she said softly. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he dropped to one knee in front of her, eyes searching hers with raw, trembling clarity. I was wrong, he said. I let the past make me blind. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. But if there's any part of you that still believes in me, I'm here. Maya stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. She set down her cup, reached for his hand. I never stopped, she whispered. And just like that, the storm between them passed. 3 weeks after that morning in the cafe, the square outside Caldwell Design Group looked nothing like its usual polished self. No media vans, no flashing lights, no elaborate stage or press wall, just rows of wooden chairs beneath a canopy of string lights, with the late afternoon sun dipping low behind the skyline. Ethan stood at the center of it all, wearing a crisp white shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands clutching a small velvet box. His heart beat wildly, but for once, it wasn't out of fear. It was hope. Maya stood at the end of the aisle, framed by golden light and soft shadows. Her brown hair was loose around her shoulders, a single red rose tucked behind her ear. The same way he had placed one in Paris, under the rain. She wore a simple silk dress that swayed gently as she stepped forward, the crowd of friends, colleagues, and family fading away until it felt like only the 2 of them remained. Ethan's voice carried over the square, low but steady. I used to believe my life was a sequence of losses. I lost my father. I lost trust. I lost the ability to believe that love wasn't just another kind of weakness. But then you came in like a quiet song I didn't know I'd been waiting to hear. He stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers. You never asked for anything. You never pushed. You just showed up and made me see color in a world that had gone gray. The crowd fell completely silent as Ethan dropped to one knee. Maya gasped softly, her hand lifting to her mouth. I don't need a contract. I don't need a show. All I need is you. Will you marry me? Not for control or convenience, but for the promise that whatever we build together, from now on. Tears filled Maya's eyes, but her smile lit up her whole face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Ethan. The applause rose gently, as if the crowd had been holding its collective breath. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, a sapphire, the exact color of her eyes the night he first truly saw her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, slow and certain, like every word he couldn't say was finally finding its place. A few days later, they held a quiet wedding on the rooftop garden above the Caldwell Design headquarters. There were no celebrities, no speeches, no flash. Just warmth, sincerity, and the people who had stood by them when everything fell apart. Maya walked down the aisle barefoot, her dress simple, her presence radiant. Ethan waited in a soft gray vest, looking at her like she was his entire world, because she was. When the officiant asked, "Do you, Ethan Caldwell, promise to love, protect, and walk beside Maya through every season of life?" he answered without hesitation, "From now until always." And when Maya was asked the same, she smiled, never once looking away. "I chose you when you couldn't even choose yourself," she said, "and I will always choose you." Their kiss, when it came, wasn't dramatic, it was real, gentle, steady. A kiss not born from spectacle, but from everything they had survived to find one another again. A year passed like a heartbeat. On a crisp autumn morning, the firm unveiled its new name, Caldwell's Bennett Atelier. The updated logo shimmered on the building's glass facade, not just a symbol of rebranding, but of rebirth. Inside, Maya walked the showroom in a linen jumpsuit, adjusting a display of sustainable textiles. Staff passed her with warm smiles, not out of obligation to their creative director, but admiration for the woman who had changed the very soul of the place. Ethan watched her from the doorway. Same sketchbook, same steady hands. Still the girl with nothing to prove, who had somehow become his entire reason for dreaming again. He walked over, slipped his arms around her waist. "You give this place its soul," he whispered. Maya turned to face him. "And you gave me a place to belong." That night, they sat on the rooftop terrace, legs curled beneath them, the skyline sparkling like a field of stars. Maya rested her head on his shoulder and Ethan gently laced his fingers through hers. "I used to think love was a distraction," he murmured. "Now I know. It's the blueprint." She smiled. "And we built it from scratch." And this time, they weren't building alone. Life lesson reflection, 300 words. At its core, The Architect's Vow is more than a love story. It's a reminder of how deeply trust, vulnerability, and second chances can reshape a life. Ethan Caldwell, a man who built skyscrapers for a living, had unknowingly built emotional walls even higher. Betrayed once, he taught himself to believe that love was a risk he couldn't afford. But sometimes, the person who enters your life isn't there to take from you. They're there to help rebuild what was broken. Maya Bennett walked into Ethan's world not to save him, but to stand beside him. She didn't wear armor or demand space. She showed up, with truth, with talent, and most of all, with heart. In doing so, she taught Ethan what it means to trust again. Their journey wasn't easy. It was marked by misunderstanding, pain, and doubt. But that's what made it real. The story teaches us this. Sometimes the most important structures we'll ever design are not made of steel or glass, but of patience, forgiveness, and courage. It's about letting go of who hurt us and allowing space for those who choose to stay. Healing isn't instant. It's built day by day, word by word, hand in hand. So if you've ever been hurt, if you've ever doubted love, remember, real love doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. And when someone shows up for you, even after the storm, you'll know it was never just about architecture. It was always about building something worth keeping. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story that warms your heart and restores your faith in love.